Hello and welcome to Eye Openers. Thank you so much for joining me, Samantha. And thank you to you guys for joining us today. And wherever you're hearing this, we're just so glad you're here because it's more fun to have insights about your business when you're here too. So I want to kick us off, obviously, by talking about what we're drinking because it really helps to have some, caffeine going through your veins in order to get more of those insights flowing. I know, at least for me anyway. But it's a little later in the day than I usually record. So I have moved on to some tea. But how about you, Samantha? What are you drinking?
I too am drinking tea, and I'm not a big caffeinated person. I gave up coffee a couple of years ago, and just so you know, the former me would hate anybody who doesn't drink coffee and would hate me for giving it up and would be like, "What have you done?" But I did, and I drink tea, and actually, this is just to give them a plug. This is Celestial Seasonings chai, and it is like a punch, and it will like the spice in here will gets me going. And I'm a person who tends to be like, you just want to be careful with me on caffeine because it's a lot.
You come with a warning. I love
I come
that.
with a warning. Do not caffeinate me.
Well, so I have little kids, and even though like I go to the gym in the morning, I don't necessarily like use it to wake up.
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things I've associated with like, oh, this is one of my little daily pleasures. And I've been looking at that recently. Like I'm not ready to step into the zone of giving it up because I feel like as a working mom, it is one of my few pleasures that I get to keep for myself.
Just
But
have my
looking at
coffee.
that kind of that ritual around it,
Yeah.
the habitual kind of routine of it, and examining where do I have these things in my life? Where have they gone maybe unexamined for too long, and are they still serving me? Are they not serving me? But I definitely stop. I have like my 12 ounces and I don't do more because like you, too much caffeine and I'd be like bouncing off the walls over here for this episode. So
Yeah.
focus. I've definitely upped my turmeric intake. So if you're on a video, you can see I have this like super yellow orangey tea right now. And we had a lot of sickness in our house over the last few months. And I feel that just the anti-inflammatory components of the turmeric really makes me feel better. And kind of like chai, right? The strong
Yeah.
spice kind of
Yep.
seasoning flavor just really gives you a little punch that feels good.
Yep. I'm all about the natural health, whatever can help with that. So we also have the turmeric and
Yeah.
just all the things.
Mm. Sometimes I think, oh, I want to do a health podcast, but no, I'll stay in my lane.
Too much accountability.
Um,
Way too much accountability.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't actually want to be responsible for anybody else's. I just want to talk about what kind of weird healthy things do you do
Yeah.
so we can learn from it.
Well, I think as a mom of little kids, you're on the front lines of health anyway. So I understand that they're just constantly going into new germ pools and like bringing
Yes.
in new things. And so in a way, you could be like the healthiest person, even though you're probably going to be sick
Yeah.
all the time.
Right, exactly. I know I had somebody who doesn't have little kids give me advice the other day. They were like, "Oh, you've been sick for oh my gosh, you always have a cold. Oh, well, you should really try this." And I was like, I should try getting rid of my kids if I don't want to what's going on. I live with these little germ monsters. Like it's not that I'm unhealthy, but
Yeah. Nope.
anyway,
I don't
that's
have little kids. I don't give advice. No parenting
yeah.
advice from me.
Exactly. Well, let's give you a proper introduction now that we know, what you're into for tea. Let's let the audience really know why you're here because you and I met recently through a mutual acquaintance, and he just knew right off the bat. He's like, "You two have to meet," and he was not wrong. It was a fiery, fun conversation. I said, "I have to have you on the podcast because people really need to hear about the kind of work you do, but I would love the story behind it." Most successful entrepreneurs have a really fun story, and getting that out there and sharing that, I feel like is so important. I mean, it's the crux of why I do this podcast to get, we all know those famous entrepreneurs, right? Like the Elon Musks and the Gary Vaynerchuks, but what about our more everyday entrepreneurs that we're running into at the grocery store that also have really amazing stories? Because those are more tangible. We can feel into that more, and it also feels more believable, like we could get there too. And so that's why we're here today. This is why we're doing what we're doing on Eye Openers. But back to my proper introduction here. So Samantha Hartley works with the consultants who are ready to break through the plateau and multiply their revenue. So not just like add 10, 20%, like we're talking about the X factor here, multiplying it. Without the exhaustion, by working with perfect clients for them on transformational engagement, so not charging by the hour, so that they can have profitable, joyful consultancies. I am so excited about this conversation because my life is full of entrepreneurs coming, telling me how exhausted they are. They literally feel like they're just spinning in circles. They don't know what to work on. They don't know how to get out of this kind of hamster wheel, rat racy feeling, even though that's the whole reason why they started their businesses to begin with.
Yeah.
So well, I'm sure we can pass back and forth a lot of stories, but I want to hear from you because somebody who starts a business that is this bold comes from somewhere, some kind of life experience. Maybe that's a great place to start. Give us the bulleted version of Samantha's story.
My bulleted story is I came into business from theater and Russian language. And so I just had this like kind of like international artsy interest and was kind of pulled accidentally into business, like most of us are artists who are like, well, I guess I need to make a living somehow. So I got pulled into it, but I happened to be in overseas at the time. And so I got actually pulled into the Coca-Cola company. So I worked with a lot of small businesses while I was working internationally and also kind of just, growing up in college and places. And so I really had a heart for small business, but then I kind of went directly from there into this multinational corporation. And so I worked in the field for them where I saw incredible dramatic growth. When I joined, it's hard to believe that such a thing, but Coke was kind of a new product there. It was a greenfield market, which is basically means like, just like go and make it available and the thing will sell itself practically. And so we grew from, just like tripled, like hundreds of millions over the 3 years that I was there. And that kind of growth is like, I've just got spoiled with seeing this dramatic growth. And so when they brought me to corporate, it was so much more about kind of like strategic, but so high level strategic that you kind of can't really make a difference in the business. It
So
felt
you
like
came
to
back
me,
stateside.
they moved me from Moscow to Atlanta. They were like, okay, if you're going to do this, then we're going to take you to Atlanta. And that's the career path there. You'd take somebody to corporate and then they're going to be there a few years and then they're going to go back out somewhere else into the field. And then that's like the career path within that company. And very quickly I was at corporate and I was like, oh, no. This is like where creativity comes to die. If you like make a suggestion in a meeting, people will look at you like, are you saying we're doing it wrong? And I was like, oh, okay. So I just was like, this is not going to work out for me. And I just left and I didn't have a thing lined up. I just left because I got burnt out. And really the answer to everything is being in the depths of misery at corporate is the reason I do everything that I do right now. I just work to be the opposite in every possible way. It's why joy is a major factor of my business. And so then I started working as a consultant for a lot of the people who I used to work with at the company. They all used to call me after I left and I would go and work for their startups. And that's kind of where I got started as a consultant. And then an important thing, and I just mentioned this on a call with some clients today, is in the beginning, for like years, my clients wouldn't implement because I was working with clients who were like, this was like let's check a box. Let's bring a consultant in and like check a box. And
And you were consulting them in what, just to be specific?
Usually like marketing and sometimes sales and marketing. And I was much more kind of niche specific back then. And now I do just much more, growth in general, and like growth is internal and external. But back then it was, sales and marketing stuff. And then they wouldn't implement. I would write stuff up and come up with what I thought were great ideas and exciting stuff. And then I would go back to them for kind of like the happy ending of my success story. And there wouldn't be anything. And I was like, you guys, like what's happening? And that's where I just started to get this idea of like, we need to work with clients, first of all, who implementing is like do or die. Like, this is not like a checkbox. This is like, Our small business needs this. We need to grow. And then the other thing is I needed to work with them, not for like 6 weeks or 3 months. So it's like, hey, we just like do this quick thing. I need to stay with them for long enough that I'm like, no, 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 you get back on the treadmill, you get back on the, whatever the business equivalent of that is, like we're learning new habits and we need to do this. And so that's when I started to work with my clients for a year. Then they would start to get these amazing results that would stick. And that's kind of like the whole story of how I work now.
Right. That's awesome. So that's a pushback I see all the time. As a psychologist, I understand that change takes a lot of time, that changing behavior is literally the hardest thing that you can do. And people wonder why they get so much resistance to change in corporation, or why they bring somebody in and in 6 weeks and it doesn't go well. Or my favorite is all the coaches that promise to do something in their 90-day program. It's like, that's barely enough time to communicate about what people want to see be different. So
get them on the same page, maybe.
Right. Exactly. Right. Or saying it once. It's like, there's so much research out there about, people need to hear it so many times. Like, what is the disconnect? And I think there's like this lack of accountability in some places in consulting or in business, where it's just like, this is like the number somebody pulled out, like 90 days, we're going to do this here. And like, but that is the hard part. I feel for consultants too. I mean, I know what it's like to run my own small business, and you are kind of left to just kind of make it all up.
Yeah.
In an educated way, but I mean, you do have to put your own offering together and figure out what that looks like. And sometimes the marketplace responds in different ways. And when I get that pushback about, oh, like that's a long engagement, I don't know. I'm like, well, it's based on science. And like, if we do anything shorter, it's not going to stick. So like, let's just not waste each other's time and money now. I don't want you to have a failed engagement because it looks bad on me, and you don't want to have one either. But how do, since you went through this yourself and you went through this change in how you show up in the marketplace, how did you work with some of that, getting people to understand that there's this disconnect between what really works, and they want that lower commitment, right? They're like, let's try you out for 90 days and see. I don't want to commit to a year.
Yeah, there's a million ways to come at it. Though, so one of the first ways is you have to work. That's why I say perfect clients. So perfect clients, exactly what they need is exactly what you do, and you're kind of like, you're together. So the other thing is that they're going to have to be your clients. If you're going to work this way, really on transformation, you're going to have clients who really want that. And I've said before, a lot of people want things to get better, but they don't want to change. So that's, I didn't realize years ago that I'm in the behavior change business, that unless my clients change their behavior, then nothing happens. And doesn't it really look just like sales or marketing or whatever? And I'm like, no, actually it has to look like, setting up your business in the right way and resting, and like all of these kind of crazy behaviors all have to do with how much money you're going to make in your business, and how profitable and joyful both you're going to be. So can you flourish? Can you sustain that? So when I go in and propose something like a year-long engagement, I will just say to them, well, we work together for a year because that's how long change takes to sustain, to stick. When I have clients who come to me and say, I'm working with this company and they don't really want to buy into the longer thing, can I do something shorter? And I'm like, you can talk about doing something shorter, and you can always pull out like what you would do in your year-long program, like pull out the first 3 months and do that as a trial. But you need to be selling that in with the intention of saying like, and when this does work, we're going to continue, because otherwise, if we don't continue, it probably won't stick. And that's going to be on you, because I'm telling you that, and not on me. I know how to make that stick, and it's the repetition that I come in and do as we continue to work together. The other thing, and this is sometimes, I just want to point this out because I'm sure some people are hearing this and thinking like, oh, but 12 months, but the client doesn't see any results until, like, they have a feeling that you don't get a result until the 12th month. No, you have quick wins. Immediately things can start to happen in the first month and the second month. And we as consultants, it's on us to do that, because we all know if you don't see a little bit of a change on the scale, you cannot stick with that diet. Or if you don't see a little change in how you look in those pants, you're not going to stick with a fitness routine. So we have to see quick wins early in order for us to be able to hang in there for the longer slog. And so that's really on us as consultants to structure the work so they see some quick wins and they're like, whoa, this is already working. It's like, yes, you are. You're doing great. Now, next thing.
I love that. What a great way to frame that, because I've seen so many people take their longer engagement, and when a client says, "Can you cut that in half?" They just
Mhm.
speed everything up, and then it doesn't stick and it doesn't
Yeah.
land. When really you could just chop up that year long, like you said, and say, "Okay, we're going to do the first section
Mhm.
as you would do it anyway,"
Yeah.
and then just when this is successful, sign up for the rest. I really love that. Really love
Yeah.
that approach. Now you mentioned joy being a big part of this. Walk me through, how do you take that and make it objective? Like, are you measuring for that, not only for yourself, but also in for the client? Like, how does that look?
I mean, I don't have measurables for it, but every client comes to me knowing that that's a factor and that I'm gonna call them out about that. So it means that I want to differentiate it from joy, from happiness, because happy is like, a certain thing. Joy
Yeah.
to me is more like you can feel like I can be doing something that's really hard in my business, or I can be like, oh, I have to make this difficult phone call and stuff like that. But I'm still feeling a certain kind of joy on a soul level because I know that I'm doing my soul's work, or I know I'm really fulfilling my purpose, or I'm in the right place at the right time. And you feel that kind of like the rightness of something, even though it's not like we fun. The hardest meetings I've had with my clients, I call them, grown up conversations, when you really have to confront a client, you really have to work through like a hard thing with them. And those of us who don't come from a psychotherapy background, Brittany, we are not that good at this. So we have to really learn this skill. And when you're doing that scary thing, and then you leave and you feel like, wow, I mean, I really did it. Like that's joy. So as I said, when I was at corporate, it wasn't that, I wasn't happy. It was that the work wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't meaningful. I wasn't allowed to do like I can, all of that. It was not about happiness. It was about feeling like I could achieve my life's purpose here,
Mhm.
and knowing like, no, I can't. And it was like causing me to be worse and worse, like my mental health, and not just me, believe me, people around me were dropping like flies. So I knew that there's a better way to do it. And so a lot of times when people come to me, and the reason I say without exhaustion, we can dramatically increase your revenues, is because we all know how to do it the exhaustion way. You just,
Yeah.
do the engagement in twice as fast, right? And you just speed up the timeline on everything. You just sell more stuff and do more work, but that isn't sustainable either. So what I want us all to look at is this sense of like working smarter, not harder, and like really aiming to work with perfect clients, so that the hard part of your work isn't like dealing with this difficult client. It's like dealing with the client's difficult issues. And
Right.
so I want us intellectually to be like, how do I get my client better results faster? How do I solve this problem? And so a lot more of our time is spent in like thinking about our work than just kind of like hard slogging.
Right, right, which is usually the zone of genius of the
Mhm,
consultant
exactly.
anyway. So that's where it is the greatest ROI for them to spend their time, which
Totally.
makes sense. That's
Totally. And I will call it, so I have a term which is the joy and genius zone. And the reason I call it that is because when we say genius zone, like we all know what we mean, right? Like, yay, sure, like it's the thing that you're great at. But there are things that we're great at or really good at that give us energy or deplete our energy. And to me, that's the difference between a genius zone and then a joy and genius zone. So, for example, I'm a really strong writer, but I don't write for my clients because even though it's a genius zone for me, it does not give me energy when I write for my clients.
Mhm.
It's expensive for me to write. And so I save all my writing for my own brand, and I work with people who write for our clients.
That's
So it gives me kind of like a measure of like what I need to be doing in the business. And so, genius zone, yes, definitely stay in your genius zone, but watch your energy as far as your joy zone. This is
oh,
another thing about some kinds of work. There may be a client that you're working with who previously was joyful for you, and now you're at a point in the work, or now there's just something about the work that you just notice like, ugh, I dread that meeting, and
yes.
I'm not getting anything out of this anymore, right? So
Yes.
that's starting to give you an indicator that that you need to do something different, whether it's let go of the client or change the work or have a conversation with them. This is how I'm using joy as a meter of what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing. Is it just energy? Well, things that drain your energy definitely aren't joyful. And there are certain things that can give me energy. Most of them are also joyful. So that's where I'm looking for energy lift and also a sense of like meaning and connection to my purpose.
Mm. I love that. When I was first starting out, I was super social sciencey about it. And I noticed that I was getting energized when I would see certain people and depleted with others. And so I
Mm,
started just tracking it and measuring it. And I
yeah,
would literally give myself like a 1 to 10, how I felt after that session. And it became so clear as I was creating my like avatar, who are
yeah,
my perfect clients, to use your term.
yeah,
And it just like jumped out of the paper. So like if you're not sure who that is for you, this is something I highly recommend doing. And I
yeah.
do it often. I do that activity like probably every other year to make
Hmm.
sure, and it shifts over time,
Yeah.
just like you said, like that changes, or even within an engagement, like we call it the honeymoon period, right? Like
Mm,
everything's going so great. And then like maybe 6 months down the road, after you've had a few of those challenging conversations, there are these parts of a long engagement like that where you have to kind of push through. But that's also what I love about a longer engagement, because that's the deeper work.
yep.
Like you can cut through that surface level stuff, but then that's where the tensions really start to come out. And that's
Totally.
exactly what you're there for, is that part of the work, but it can be uncomfortable at the time. So,
Yep. I had a client who it took me about 5 months into the engagement to learn her sabotage strategy. And I
ah,
was like, aha, I got it. She came to me one day and she was like, I'm confused. And I was like, she's confused every third meeting.
there it is.
And we talk about this. I've said this, like, is it me? Like, and then I realized I was like, is it not clear? And I thought, this is the thing. Is she goes, she shakes the etch a sketch and is like, blank slate. I'm confused. And I was like, no, that is it. And when I said it, she was like actually joyful about it too, because it was like, oh, it was a revelation to her. Oh no, I'm not. I'm not confused. I'm scared about what the next steps are, and in order to deal with that, this is what I do. So we'd go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and then the day she said that, I was like, eureka. And then wonderful things happened.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I've jumped around here on the questions because we have this really unique opportunity, I think, in the way that you work being so different from other people. And so I really wanted to highlight that. But I want to ask you, what kinds of breakthroughs or moments of insights or eye openers have you had that changed the way that you lead or show up in your business? Like, what were those kind of key inflection points that were like, aha, and you can't unsee it and you have to change the way you're operating?
Well, I think the transformational engagements was really one of the first times that, because I had a client who came to me and was like, I needed this and a this and a this and a this. And I thought, like, I could just do this as like 4 miniature engagements, but really it's a holistic thing. Like, this is like, we just do this whole thing. So instead of saying, I'm going to do it this way, I just said, we're going to work together a year, and over the course of the year we're going to do this. That client is still working with me today, by the way.
Oh,
So
wow.
when it just created a deeper relationship. We did do most of those things. Some of those things got delayed until later, and her business has dramatically grown. But that was the beginning of me saying, also the former me was, a lot of times I was working with clients, I was like, I don't want to see this client in 6 months. I'm going to be done with this and get out of here. Like, are you kidding me? The idea of working with somebody for a year, again, my former self was like, no way. And I had done a lot of personal development work on myself, so that when it was 5 months in to somebody and they started, I finally realized their sabotage strategy, I could
Mhm.
have a conversation about that. So, really the choice to do deeper work was one of the biggest transformational moments. I had been doing, you know, uh, I talked mostly about 100K engagements for my clients, because really, if you work with corporation, and a lot of my clients are working on people issues, there's really no issue that a corporation has that isn't $100,000 problem worth solving. And some of my clients who work with mid-sized companies are like, but it's not so much here. And I'm like, still, really anything to do with people are a major thing that they would bring a consultant in, is that number. But in my own business, I was selling $60,000 and $80,000 engagements, and I have since sold some hundred. But just in general, what you want to look at is like a higher, yes, high ticket, but what does it mean? It means an investment that is commensurate to the value that you're bringing the client. So I had been doing a lot of those, but for short-term engagements. So like a 6-month thing, and then something like, call me if anything breaks, but like it was a 6-month thing. And then I was like, no, I think I need to just say I am with them, and we're continuing to meet in a structured way all throughout this, because sometimes they call and sometimes they don't. And I'm like, I'm going to force these results to happen and to stick, right? I'm going to be there as for the accountability and the support the whole time. And that was really one of the biggest transformations in my business, was starting to work like that. Also, consultants struggle with the revenue roller coaster. And if I look at my revenues pre and post, I had classic revenue roller coaster revenues, which was it can still be a decent amount of money that you're earning. But you still have peaks and valleys. And I always share my most stark example was a month I had a $40K month followed by $700 month. And I'm always like, no matter how you structure your payments to yourself and how you do your books and stuff like that, that's like too big of a swing. So when I started doing these longer term engagements, and you just pile those one on top of the other, that's going to turn into a business that's going to give you a lot of security. And my business just went like that after that. So that's really one of the big ones. I would say the other thing is that because we do, my husband's a spiritual director. And so because we do so much personal development work, over the years, I started to bring that more into my work. And so we would work on things like inner child. I said, saboteur. So we're working on archetypes a lot, like child archetype, hermit archetype. So a lot of the personal development work that I was doing, I started to bring into my business. And so again, my former self would be like, don't go there. You don't know what you're doing. What if they bring up a horrible thing? What if they bring up a scary thing that you don't know how to handle? I've just been able to go into places with my clients that my former self wouldn't have known how to handle, but I do know how to handle because I've done really hard work with myself. And so I can work with my clients on things like money trauma and again, all of this crazy self-sabotage and our fears of things. And because I'm willing to work on that level, I think we have deeper discussions. My clients get better results, and the right people come to me and the right people stay for a longer time because they really, really want to work on that kind of a level. And it's made my business much more fulfilling, I would say.
Right. And there's that joy piece and impact. Well, I love that you're talking about value, because I feel like everywhere you look, someone's trying to say like, here's how you get high ticket clients, or, work with CEOs, or all this thing that's like just about money and status. But if you're not bringing that value, like you can't just like, Samantha says charge 100K. So I'm just going to charge 100K. Like, it's not that simple, right? Like you need to be determining like, what is the value of the problem I'm solving?
Yeah.
What does that create for them, and basing it that way. So it really does need to be value centered and looking at what you do. But what you're saying, right, is so important, because we're seeing such a trend in, I hope it's not a trend. I hope it's lasting, that we're recognizing that people in the workplace are people and not just filling a role, right? And so by showing up and being willing to have some of these deeper conversations and really see people for more of who they are and not just the role they're filling, that is part of the transformation, is what I hear you say. That's part of the deep value that you're bringing. And when we can do that, we really can transform the organization or the institution or whatever you're working in as a whole. Like the community comes along after people start to see the value of showing up differently or just really being seen differently.
And that's my why. I mean, I want to transform the world of me back at corporate. I was in a toxic environment that was ridiculous and nobody should have to work in that. And people still do. When I talk with my clients about the problems they're solving in organizations, not much has changed. Like you can lay off people in a tweet. Okay, well, that's not okay, right? So I'm working with people to transform corporations. I don't want to work with a corporation. I don't want to go into that environment and work. So I'm working with the change agents who are working with those companies and with the smaller companies. I mean, small business is the backbone of this country. And so I work with clients who are working with those kind of like moms and pops and the family-owned businesses and the mid-sized manufacturing. Those companies, what they have in common is that humans work at them. And even if we're one day outnumbered by robots, there will still be a human here and there. And I want that human to feel like, I love my job. I love coming to work. It is not my whole entire identity. I have hobbies and a family or stuff outside of work, a spiritual path I'm pursuing. But I do want the time that we do spend at work to be as joyful as possible for for those humans who still work at companies.
Yeah, I love that. I was just listening to a podcast with Eric Mosley, who runs Work Human, and it's based out of Boston, actually. And he was talking about that bringing more celebration into the workplace and actually how much that really does for people. And he tied it into retention, like, that actually, if you have 5 points of place where you can celebrate somebody or say thank you for what they've done explicitly, that you reduce the likelihood of them leaving by like 50%.
It's amazing.
It's so easy.
It's
And
so
it's
easy.
free. I'm so sick of saying, well, I can't give a raise or I can't do whatever. It's like, no, the most meaningful stuff is free and it takes 5 minutes.
Like actually recognize somebody sincerely. Well, the funny thing is that a lot of us were raised with sandwich feedback, where it's like you say something good and then you say the thing that they are screwing up and then you say something good again. And it's actually, that's a 2 to 1. Actually, you need to do more like a 10 to 1. We reinforce the positive behaviors. And like, again, these are adults we're dealing with. Like, can't you come up with catch people doing things right almost all the time? But, I say that, and that really helped me because I'm not a sandwich feedback person. So if somebody would give me something to review, I'd be like, here's the thing you need to work on. So it really helped me to be like, no, like tell people all the time, oh, I saw that LinkedIn post you did, really good job on that. Instead of saying, hey, you could have added a call to action. Or, catch people doing things right. And if you catch your clients doing things right, you're going to sustain that behavioral change longer. And, just to take it back to the inner child stuff, that's even if people don't really care about like compliments and stuff like that, that there's a part of them that really does want to get an A and to be doing well and to be recognized and called out, and speak to that part and be like, hey, great job today.
Yeah, really great point. So that is a primitive part of our brain that I don't care who you are, you can't outrun. And so I always try to teach people to work with that part because it's not going anywhere. Like we do that for our self-preservation. Like we want to be liked and accepted and part of something bigger than us, and run with that. Like know that about yourself and then take that and make it about others, right? Like if you want to your boss to notice your great job, then also your people are feeling that way. And so the best thing we can do is just to spread that. But it does sometimes start at the top. And if that's not a framework that people are used to, and that's not ways that they give feedback in that culture, it can be challenging to start. But if you are hearing this information, you can cite this podcast as a source. I'm happy to share with you my resources and make that different. You have influence as well. People they're not so quick to see that anybody can change an organization. You can make influence and make changes too.
And I promise no parenting advice, but I would say I think that's probably a good thing to do at home too. Catch the kids doing something right, catch your spouse doing something right, catch everybody, your friends and your neighbors.
It's so true.
The thing is, and the more you do it, the more you build that habit for yourself of even noticing it, which is, I think it's an upward spiral.
Completely. So I want to ask you one more question here. And this is great for everybody's learning. What would you say is the number one behavior that got you to where you are today, but might hold you back going forward? So that's a two-part, right? So, and I do this because I want people to share their vulnerability a little bit. And it's a great way for us to see how we evolve and change over time.
I mean, I am at war with my clients on the work hard thing. And so, but a lot of what got me here is just the resilience of not giving up and going. And I really have to watch myself for the pushing. Allow instead, in law of attraction, there are people who believe in something called the law of allowing, which is we let things happen. And I'm that's my worst law. Because I'm not a big let things happen person. I'm going to make it happen. So, and I had a boss, before my corporate terrible experience, I had a wonderful boss at that same company who said, my job is make it happen. And I was like, I love that. My job is make it happen. And I'm make it happen, make it happen. And I think a lot of what got me here today is I will make it happen. Get out of my way because I will make it happen. By God, if you want somebody to get it done, I will make it happen. And that can really as I get more mature, what I start to look for is no, I can allow it to happen. I can put things in motion, and then I can allow the universe can step in and cause things to happen, or somebody else can support me and make things happen. So, things can change.
Beautiful. How do you track that for like, how do you keep your finger on that?
I would say amount of time I work, um, uh, looking at how clients come to me. Like, did a client come to me because of something I did, or because of kind of just deadgum serendipity, you know? um, and sometimes if there's enough of it that's just serendipity, I feel like, I'm being supported. Look at that. Like, here's clients that just dropped out of nowhere. Like, oh, somebody I knew a long time ago is like, hey, I think I need to work with you. Or somebody is like, a referral from someone I just met. And,
Yeah.
but, certain things like that. And I feel like a lot of that is like, you've laid the groundwork. And so you don't really need to push anymore. And you can just kind of like let the boulder roll downhill at a certain point.
Yeah. Right.
And as I say, I just like work with my clients on this all the time, because there are certain habits that I have that I want them to develop. And then there are certain ones I'm like, I don't think everybody needs to have that one.
Right. Right. Really helpful. I know for me, I have hard start and stop times. And
Good.
that I have, lots of things going on in my private life
Yep.
that support that, reinforce it.
Sure does.
But that's been really helpful for me, is to say, and it's done, and I'm closing the computer at this time, and
Absolutely.
keep that balance. So.
I live on Martha's Vineyard on this beautiful island, and we vacationed here before we moved here. And in the winter time, the sun goes down right now at 4:30 in the afternoon. And so one of the things that would happen is I have dogs that have to be walked, and we can't walk in the dark. And so I was like, oh, my day needs to end by 4, or else I don't get to walk them at the end of the day. And so I began to shape my work hours to accommodate that.
Awesome. I love it. That's really, that's the goal, right? When you decide to work for yourself, is to make the business work for your life and not the other way around. So
Absolutely.
Perfect spot to end on. Samantha, tell us, how can people find you? Because you're doing amazing work, and there are so many consultants out there that need to make this shift in how they show up.
Thank you. They can find me at samanthahartley.com. That's my website. And then I'm at work at LinkedIn. So that's a good place to track me down and connect with me. And please connect and not follow. I don't like this whole thing. I'm like, I want to connect with people. I'm not here to cultivate a tribe of followers. Just let's make friends. Just connect with me. I'm not all that.
Yeah, well, and I'm not sure if you can see it on your end, but I'm getting comments from consultants who are watching this right now on LinkedIn. So if you're seeing this on, live stream, obviously she's right there, click it. But if you're watching this later, I'm making sure all that contact information is in the show notes. So just scroll through those show notes to get the information. Thank you to you guys for joining us, because without you, there would be like nobody to have all this wisdom land on. So please take it, run with it. Let me know what you're using and what's helpful, because that's really a fun way to generate, more guests and see what is helpful for you guys. Thank you, Samantha, for being here, because without a guest, you guys would just have to listen to me. So I hope you have had plenty of eye-opening moments during this call. I know I certainly did, and put those to good use. And happy holidays to you guys. We're right around Thanksgiving. You might be listening to this at a different time, but we're right around the holidays, and I am grateful for all these connections I'm making and fun conversations we're having. So thanks again, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for having me.